After a recent conversation with somebody, it's really clear to me that we need to have a deeper conversation when it comes to entity removal, compassionate dispossession, and the IFS model of working with and removing what we call UBs or unattached burdens. And I want to talk about these models because I really believe that this is the best way to handle these situations. I do not believe in simply casting out attachments and demons, because I am fully aware that if it's there for a reason, and it is attached to a part of a person. There are many exorcisms which actually end up accidentally removing parts of a person, which is not good. Accidentally casting out a part, thinking that it is an attachment, not only ruptures the trust with that part to the aware ego or the self, but also with the facilitator and the system or the part itself, if there is a facilitator involved. I was having a conversation with somebody a couple of days ago, and they said, well, aren't you concerned that if somebody has too much compassion, then they're going for the entity or for the attachment, that they're going to continue to allow it to be there? And I want to make this very clear. Compassion is not the problem. A study was done on some of the most compassionate beings and people in the world, and what was the number one thing that they all had in common, which would probably surprise you? Boundaries. So don't get it twisted. There is a firmness. There is an individuation within compassion. Compassion doesn't mean that you just allow anybody and anything in. You can absolutely hold compassion and boundaries at the same time. In fact, I would say that it would be pretty hard to have compassion without a sense of boundaries or a sense of definition of yourself. So if compassion is not the problem, then what does allow these things to continue to be attached? There's a number of different things. One can be fear from a part of the system. So a part can be holding on to an entity because it's afraid that if it lets go, it will be attacked or retaliated upon. There can be an attachment to the attachment because it's providing something for a part. It could be providing a false sense of safety. It could be providing protection. It could be providing a sense of power. Attachments can also give parts of the system objects as a way to stay connected to that part. So in doing this work, you want to make sure that there are no objects, cords, devices that are allowing the entity to stay attached to that part. But again, there's a really common mistake that happens where people see these cords, whether that's to an entity or another person, and they just start chopping them off or burning off cords. That's really irresponsible because this is really important diagnostic information. You want to see what organs, what energy centers within the body that is attached to. You know, a person may be working in this process of removing a UB and look down and see, oh, there's a cord going directly to my guts and I've been having really bad digestive issues. Before you cut or remove cords or implants, you have got to make sure that whatever part you are removing this from is ready to let this go. Robert Falconer, the creator of this book, The Others Within Us, which is an adjunct off of internal family systems, uses a really good analogy. He says these entities, or UBs as they're called in the book, are a lot like ants that you find in your kitchen. The ants are not necessarily there to help you, but what they do is they show you where the spillage is. They show you where the leaks are. And in that sense, they are kind of an ally because you then get to the root of whatever it is that was creating an opening for this in the first place. Okay, so let's go back to what, if it's not compassion, what is it that actually allows these things to continue to stay? So I said fear of retaliation from a part, fear of loss of something, whether that's loss of companionship, loss of power, loss of whatever it is that UB might be providing for that part. And also angry parts or parts that want to fight or protect the system against UBs can also be an attachment point. This is why access to the aware ego is so important. The aware ego needs to ensure that all parts within the system that are keeping the UB intact are actually ready to step back so that the self can facilitate the process of untangling parts from the UB. And as a facilitator, if you are doing this type of work with other people, I cannot stress this enough. If you have parts within your system that are fearful, that are forceful, that are protective, that are angry, you may very well have the UB jump onto you or feed off of the energy that is coming from these parts of you. Having neutrality and compassion does not mean that we lose our firmness. When we are working with UBs, there has to be a clarity that you cannot stay here. For the love of God also, if you ever have somebody come up to you and give you unsolicited advice, telling you, oh, you have an attachment, let me help you to get rid of that. I'm sorry, but that is a massive boundary violation. There are so many people out there walking around with attachments. It is not our job to tell somebody that they have something on them. The only time that I would ever even attempt to remove a UB is if I was 1000% sure that that's what it was. And though I am certainly not saying that this is the case in every situation, what I've encountered many times within myself and with a couple of others is that these UBs are oftentimes brainwashed. They're oftentimes a cog in the wheel of a pyramid scheme. Some can be very aggressive, very verbally violent, even physically violent. But the reality is that they aren't really powerful. They are borrowing power and they're starving. A lot of them are literally starving. When they see that there is an option to leave, that there is an option to actually have an experience that is not one of slavery, though it may take a little bit of time, many of them are willing to leave. And frankly, it doesn't matter whether they're willing to leave or not, so long as all parts within the system no longer give consent for that to be there, it can't be there. So no, compassion does not continue to feed entities. Compassion comes with a strong sense of self. It's fear, a part's attachment to getting something from the entity, or a protection system which is angry or wants to fight with it. Those are the things that keep it hooked in. It's the fragmentation, the lack of parts or subconscious to conscious relationship. And it's also through the limiting beliefs and the unprocessed experiences which keep parts of us stuck in a frame of reality that is oftentimes very powerless, very helpless. Those are the things that keep it attached. And unless you want it jumping onto you, you had better practice that neutrality and staying in the self with the capital S if you're going to facilitate processes like that. Because the age of scapegoating and getting to blame everything on a UB and cast it out with this kind of energy, that is done. I mean, people are still going to do it, but it's not going to work. And frankly, it's just kind of stupid because we live in a reality where nothing is actually separate from us. So if something is there, there is a reason why it is there. I do not and will not ever ascribe to the frame of reality that these things can just latch onto people for absolutely no reason. There's nothing going on within them to be a frequency match to that. That's just nonsensical. And it's not only just nonsensical, it's just not true. And it also doesn't help anybody to actually get to the bottom of this stuff and regain sovereignty, agency, and real power.